First of all, thank you very much for sparing your time to talk to us, and thank you to the U.S. Embassy for supporting our program, which is very important for us. First of all, for as long as you have been here in Kosovo, what is your opinion on media in Kosovo and on women's role in Kosovo?
Well, that's two very different questions. Thanks for coming. I really like to bring people to the embassy. I know that some of you have been here before and some of you haven't, so it's really great to be able to share this wonderful space. It's great to have been in Kosovo for 2 years. It's become home. I think that I know you've had the experience of living abroad, but for me, going from the U.S. to Kosovo was a real eye-opener because you mentioned the women's role and you mentioned the media role. It's so very different here than it is in the United States. Let me start with the women's role, because I think that that's something that I've been dealing with today even. I don't think that women in Kosovo are appreciated as fully as they can be. And I say that as someone who deals with the youth, who deals with some extremely talented people from all over Kosovo, from all up and down the economic spectrum, from all of the ethnic communities. And I've been consistently impressed by how smart and talented and energetic Kosovo's women are. I think that one of the greatest potentials Kosovo has is to fully engage their women as an equal part of society. Unfortunately, I don't think that Kosovo's men are as enlightened as I am, or as we are in the U.S. government in envisioning full equality for women and men. Just today, I dealt with some terrible issues of sexual harassment, where men thought it was no problem that in a working environment they could comment on how a woman was dressed and whether or not she was married or whether or not she had children. You know, those kinds of attitudes that are kind of backwards. In America, they belong in the 1950s, but I see those kinds of attitudes still alive in Kosovo. For every guy who I work with who I think is extremely enlightened and forward-thinking, I think there are probably 4 or 5 who don't realize that we're past the era where women belong in the home and men belong in the workplace. In order for a society to progress, you need to fully engage 100% of the population. And of course we know women make up 50% of that population. It's a tremendous drain on resources when you don't respect women and utilize their full capacities, because we know they're just as smart as us, they're just as talented as us. I mean men. They're just as smart, they're just as talented, they have just as much potential. It is, however, changing. What I see in Pristina is very different than what I see outside of Pristina, and I really hope that Kosovo moves forward. Now, Kosovo is not very different from other places I've worked, so I don't want to say that Kosovo is any different than in India or China or Pakistan or you know, any of the other developing world. But it would be great, especially with as many European aspirations as Kosovo has, that it looked to the best of Western European societies. You asked about media as well.
Yeah.
I like the freedom in Kosovo media. I don't think that that many societies in the Balkans have as free a media as Kosovo does. Unfortunately, I don't think that Kosovo media is fair. I think that too often in the excitement of getting a scoop or being the first on the story, I worry that Kosovo journalists don't research as much as they could. That they rely on assumptions or single sources or on gossip. And I find that is a very dangerous tendency. We all know how the publishing world was, right? Back in the 1960s and 70s, it took time to get a story published and to have that story dispersed amongst people. And you had to put it in print and print it on a newspaper. That, you know, there was an hours-long process, and then someone had to buy the newspaper and someone had to read it. Now with portals and with Facebook and with instantaneous media, there is a tendency towards some irresponsibility. And I know that American media has very similar problems. So one of the things that Kosovo media lacks, in my opinion, is the willingness to really do research and publish a full story not just, I hate to say this, but glorified gossip. I'm not saying that all media is like this. I'm not saying there are not very good journalists in Kosovo. There are. There's some very, very smart journalists. But they need to resist the temptation to just publish that story immediately on some portal and really research what they're doing and really apply critical thinking and analytic thinking to their work.
So do you think that the media in Kosovo gives enough space to women's stories?
I don't think that they do. I think that, well, let me put it this way. I find that the fact that so many portals devote more pages to women in bikinis than to women's rights is a very distressing trend. Now we know that there's some very powerful women in media. I don't need to go into the names, you know. And those women do a very good job of expressing the need for equality for women, equality between the genders. But there can be so much more done. You know, the fact is that there are some very, very important issues facing women in Kosovo, whether it's discrimination or harassment or gender-based violence. Now, I don't think that they should necessarily write stories for the sake of stories, but there are certain certain issues that are important to women that should be important to men that I think could be paid attention to more.